You have been weighed.
You have been measured.
And you absolutely
have been found wanting.
My new ruler is bright blue. It measures me and it measures you.
You're tall.
Measures length and width and height. My super ruler is alright. Measurement is fun for me. Just come and try and then you'll see. Find the height or weight or temp. My favorite thing is measurement.
Hey guys, welcome back. We're on our way to DexaFit Atlanta to have some laboratory tests performed. We will have a DEXA scan, which looks at our body composition. We will have our resting metabolic rate tested, and we will have a VO2 max test. The purpose here is twofold. Number one, we hope this might serve to document our starting point. If we repeat these tests a few times during the project, hopefully we will be able to monitor our progress. The second purpose in this is that this might help us gauge the relative accuracy and precision of the monitoring devices we're using. Our heart rate monitor, our scale, things like that. We're about to pull up. Let's go get measured.
Measurement is fun for me. Just come and try and then you'll see. Find the height or weight or temp. My favorite thing is measurement. I got a scale to stand on. And it weighs that, and it weighs more.
Heavier,
It tells me pounds or kilograms. It tells my weight is just so grand. Measurement is fun for me. Just come and try and then you'll see. Find the height or weight or temp. My favorite thing is measurement. I got a glass thermometer. It tells me each day's temperature.
cold.
Celsius or Fahrenheit. My thermometer's out of sight. Measurement is fun for me. Just come and try and then you'll see. Find the height or weight or temp. My favorite thing is measurement.
I had a great experience at DexaFit Atlanta. Maureen and Jennifer are extremely knowledgeable and they gave me a lot of great feedback. So let's sit down and take a look at the results. So if you've seen episode 1, then you know that one of the ways that we view the system is in terms of anatomy and physiology. From the anatomical perspective, we had our body composition evaluated via a 3D body scan and a DEXA scan. And in terms of physiology, we had a resting metabolic rate test and a VO2 max test. The 3D body scan utilizes infrared camera technology to measure the outside shape of our body. And the DEXA scan uses a dual X-ray technology to measure the inside of our body.
You'll see detailed information about your fat, bone, and lean mass. Your bone density will also be provided as a T-score, the WHO gold standard for assessing bone health and your risk for osteoporosis. Our clinical grade analysis and visualizations segment your body into regions, including your arms, legs, and torso. This enables you to target specific areas of concern and correct muscle imbalances. One of the most valuable measurements on your report is the visceral fat data. Visceral fat, or VAT, is the deep belly fat around your organs and is a critical metric for overall health.
We assess our metabolism through the resting metabolic rate test and the VO2 max test. And these tests work by wearing a mask over your face, and it monitors the amount of oxygen that you're inhaling and the amount of carbon dioxide you're exhaling. And by comparing the two, it can reveal a lot about your metabolism, whether that's resting metabolism or active metabolism.
The DexaFit Resting Metabolic Rate Test is a 10-minute clinical grade analysis of your overall metabolic health. Learn how to use this data to design customized weight loss or muscle building plans. Discover your daily caloric intake and see how effectively you burn fat versus sugar. Once your body is completely relaxed, we'll connect a small breathing device and nose clip, which accurately measures your oxygen consumption and values of air inhaled and exhaled. Important metrics for learning the health of your metabolism. The DexaFit Cardio Fitness Test helps you discover your cardiovascular health, overall fitness, and biological age. Throughout the test, you'll be wearing a face mask connected to a breathing device, which measures the volume and exchange of inhaled and exhaled air. This data helps us identify how well your body uses oxygen and measures the important metrics showing us your overall health and fitness. During your test, we'll learn when you're burning fat and sugar during exercise, how well your fitness compares to optimal, the highest amount of effort you can sustain before fatiguing during a workout, but also the least amount of effort it takes to still improve your cardio fitness health.
So if we start with the body composition parameters, the main terms we need to be familiar with are body fat percentage and lean mass percentage and bone mineral content and bone mineral density. So body fat percentage is the percentage of your overall weight that is fat, and we can represent that as a percentage or as a raw number of pounds. Lean body mass is everything that's not fat or bone. So that would include muscles, organs, skin, and that too could be represented as a percentage of overall body weight or as a number of pounds. Some of the things we'll be looking at in this assessment are body symmetry, not only fat percentage, but fat distribution. Where on your body are you carrying your fat? So to examine the results, let's start going through the Fit3D website. This is the Fit3D website. I believe that's the manufacturer of the equipment DexaFit uses for the 3D body scan. And all of this data was provided in printed form. This app's pretty cool. It's got a 3D rendering of my body. We have the wellness metrics. I have a body shape rating of 68, which is apparently on a scale to 100. It takes into account BMI, body fat percentage, and location of fat. We have my waist circumference, I have my weights to hip ratio, also known as the android gynoid ratio. We'll look at that closer when we see the DEXA scan. And my trunk to legs ratio is 1.5. The posture data is very interesting. I feel like I misperformed the test. I believe I was holding the handles too wrong. I do believe I have asymmetries in my balance and posture, but I'm not sure these are the exact numbers. I do believe the head measurement, which says that my head is shifted 0.2 inches to the left with a tilt to the left of 6.3%. I do have neck stiffness issues, and I do have more issues on my left side than my right. So that's great data to take to my chiropractor. The balance data, again, looks very interesting. It measures how much weight you're putting on the front and back of each foot. Again, I would expect to be somewhat asymmetrical here, but because of the way I performed the test, I'm not sure these are the exact numbers. The body measurements are extremely interesting, and we will see correspondence to this in the DEXA scan when we look at the interior of the body. But my neck is 15.6 inches. We see my chest and my waist circumferences. We see the circumference of my hips. Again, these will come into play when we look at android gynoid ratio in the DEXA scan. My left and right biceps are approximately the same size, 11.7 inches. My left forearm is slightly larger than my right forearm by 0.4 inches. My left thigh is almost a full inch larger than my right thigh, but my right calf is slightly larger than my left calf. So this is not only asymmetry left to right, it's cross asymmetrical from upper to lower, left to right. So that's the Fit3D website and an assessment of our exterior dimensions. So now let's take a look at the DEXA scan and get a peek at our insides. So this is the DexaFit app. So they gave me a longevity score of 89, which apparently is 9 points higher than people like me. And this score is based on the following factors. Body fat percentage, which I was assessed to be at 20.3% with a theoretical target of 15% body fat. My VO2 max was measured at 38.2 milliliters per minute per kilogram, and they're setting a target target for me of 45 milliliters per minute per kilogram. My visceral fat was assessed at 1.11 pounds with a target of 0.6. This is the fat that accumulates around your midsections and around your organs. 117 pounds of my body weight is lean, meaning not bone and not fat. They set a target for me of 125 pounds. So the target would be to gain 8 pounds of muscle. My resting heart rate was measured on this day to be 57 beats per minute with a target of 50 beats per minute. So now we'll drill down into body composition and we'll focus first on body fat. Once again, I was assessed as having a 20.3% body fat, and that equates to 31.2 pounds of fat. It gets really interesting when we look at where this fat is stored and the symmetry particularly of it. In my trunk, mainly my upper body, I have 7.2 pounds on the left side and 6.8 pounds on the right side, the total of 14 pounds. So I'm carrying more fat in my left upper body than my right upper body. My left arm contains 1.8 pounds of fat and my right arm contains 1.6 pounds of fat. And when we get down to my legs, my 11.6 pounds of body fat in my legs, 5.6 are on the left side and 6 pounds are on the right side. As we drill down into lean mass, with 76% lean body mass, which equates to 117 pounds, in my trunk, my left side has 26.7 pounds lean mass, and my right side has 25.3 pounds of lean mass. If you look at the lean mass of my arms, I have 7.2 pounds on the left, 7.9 pounds on the right. Coming down to my legs, with 41 pounds of lean mass, I have 21.2 pounds on my left and 20 pounds on my right. So my left leg has approximately 1.2 pounds more muscle than my right leg. If we look a little closer at visceral fat, again, we are carrying 1.11 pounds of visceral fat, which is rated to be safe, between safe and high risk, probably pretty low for my peer group. And then we look at AG ratio. And this one I'm not going to attempt to explain, but it's essentially the ratio of your waist to your hips. And android is waist and gynoid is hips. We saw in the exterior measurements what we're seeing on the internal measurements. We have an AG ratio of 0.96, and the goal is to have a 1.0 ratio. And if we address the muscle imbalances, then we'll get closer and closer to a value of 1. Now, if we drill down into bone mass and bone density, this is another one I'm not going to attempt to explain in too much depth, but the T-score is allegedly an indicator of your bone density health. And while my negative 0.1 is listed as normal, Maureen, the owner of DexaFit, told me that these tests often report these T-score numbers on the high side. So my T-score may be slightly lower than this, and it's not a cause for concern, but she said it might warrant a bone density scan, and I should speak with my physician if I'm concerned about that. We can look at the numbers for bone mineral content, and apparently our bones weigh 6.1 pounds, and we have bone density for various regions of the body. So those are the results of the body composition test we had. And as we go into look at the metabolic parameters, we should define certain terms and explain certain processes. So all physical movement of the body and in the body requires ATP, Adenosine Triphosphate. This is sometimes referred to as the primary unit of energy. And we have enough ATP stored in our muscles for about 5 seconds of activity. And for beyond that time period, we use metabolic processes to convert other substrates into ATP, such as carbohydrate, fat, and protein. There are 3 primary metabolic systems that we can utilize to convert various substrates into ATP. 2 of these are anaerobic, meaning no oxygen is required, and one of them is aerobic, meaning requiring oxygen. So starting with the ATP PCR system, this system is utilized, it's anaerobic, does not require oxygen, and we utilize this system for immediate energy use for efforts between 5 and 15 seconds. This is the energy system you will use primarily for like a 100-yard dash. The second metabolic system that we can use to convert fuel into ATP for cellular use is the glycolytic system, also known as the lactic system. And in this system, which is anaerobic, not requiring oxygen, carbohydrates are converted into ATP. Also created in this process are lactate and hydrogen ions. It's this lactate that causes muscle soreness and fatigue and a burning sensation. And this system is useful for efforts lasting 1 to 2 minutes. And the main reason for this is as the lactic acid builds up in your system, there's a recovery period required to dissipate that lactic acid. And the third and final system is the oxidative system or the aerobic system. This is the one of the 3 metabolic systems that is aerobic, meaning it requires oxygen to be carried out. It's not as fast acting as the 2 other systems. This process takes place through the Krebs cycle, also known as the citric acid cycle, and the electron transport chain. Carbohydrate, fat, and protein can all be used as fuel in this process. And optimizing this system, particularly to utilize fat as a fuel, is one of the primary metabolic goals in preparing for ultra-endurance events. Fat stores greatly exceed levels of stored glycogen, and the preservation of protein is desirable for muscular endurance and for recovery. Beyond muscular development and mobility, our fitness goals can be defined in terms of optimizing these metabolic processes, including increasing our ability to uptake oxygen and to mobilize fat as our primary source of fuel. This is accomplished through specified nutrition and exercise. And the reason that fat metabolism is so important for our goals is that even if you're very efficient at processing carbohydrate, after 2 or 3 hours of effort, it becomes very difficult to consume enough carbohydrate to keep up with energy expenditure. And with a couple thousand calories of stored glycogen in our body and over 100,000 calories of fat on our bodies, then our efficiency at mobilizing body fat as fuel is one of the most important aspects of our ability to perform in ultra-endurance activities. Now that we're familiar with the 3 metabolic processes that we can use to convert fuel into ATP, we can drill down into what our metabolic testing has revealed about us. First, we should review a couple terms. Total daily energy expenditure is normally measured in number of calories that are required for our daily activity and to maintain current body weight. What we call basal metabolic rate or resting metabolic rate is the number of calories required for base bodily functions minus extra activity and the thermogenic impact of food. Resting metabolic rate represents approximately 60 to 80% of our total daily energy expenditure. And interestingly, the brain, making up only about 2% of body mass, utilizes approximately 20% of our total daily energy expenditure. Another value we will discuss is the respiratory exchange ratio. This is the ratio of carbon dioxide exhaled divided by the oxygen inhaled. And by measuring this ratio, scientists can tell us what percentage of our fuel comes from fat and which percentage comes from carbohydrate. So let's go ahead and run through the DexaFit app and check out our numbers.
Drilling down into the results of the RMR test, it was determined that I require 1,515 calories in order to maintain basic bodily functions and maintain body weight. My resting heart rate during the RMR test was measured at 57 beats per minute, and my respiratory exchange ratio at 0.74 indicates that I utilize fat for approximately 87% of my daily caloric needs. The estimations for total daily energy expenditure requirements are pretty interesting. For a sedentary lifestyle, with my RMR representing 83% of my daily caloric needs, to account for 4% activity and 12% digestion and 0% exercise, I would need to consume 1,818 calories to maintain my body weight. If I wish to be lightly active with 13% exercise, then my total daily energy expenditure requirements rise to 2,083 2,253 calories per day. Moderate activity would require 2,348 calories. Very active would require 2,613 calories a day. And extremely active would require 2,879 calories per day. And we mentioned before that along with periodizing cardiovascular training, we need to periodize our caloric intake. Now let's go take a look at the results from the VO2 max test. The primary objectives of the VO2 max test are to establish our two key heart rate thresholds and our ability to uptake oxygen throughout the range of heart rates. The thresholds we're interested in are the aerobic threshold and the anaerobic threshold. The aerobic threshold is the point where your anaerobic energy system starts to contribute a bit more to total energy production, but you are still primarily relying upon the aerobic metabolic system. The anaerobic threshold is the point at which your lactate clearance can no longer keep up with accumulation. This graph reports the primary parameters that were measured, as well as identifying the key thresholds. We see in blue the volume of oxygen, and in red we see the volume of carbon dioxide exhaled, and the black line is the respiratory exchange ratio based on those two volumes, and the green line indicates my heart rate. We see the AT represents the aerobic threshold, RC is our anaerobic threshold, and the VO2 max is our maximum uptake of oxygen. Looking at our specific numeric results, we can see that I reached my aerobic threshold at 136 beats per minute, and my ability to take up oxygen at that point was 23.6 milliliters per kilogram per minute. We see that we hit my anaerobic threshold at 159 beats per minute, and at that point my ability to uptake oxygen can be represented as 32.5 milliliters per kilogram per minute. We reached my VO2 max at 177 beats per minute at a value of 38.2 milliliters per kilogram per minute. Finally, my max heart rate was measured at 179 beats per minute, at which point my ability to uptake oxygen had fallen to 35.7 milliliters per kilogram per minute. Our key numbers in this assessment are the VO2 max at 38.2 milliliters per kilogram per minute, max heart rate of 179, the anaerobic threshold of 159 beats per minute, at which point my VO2 uptake was 32.5 milliliters per kilogram per minute. And based on the max heart rate, we can calculate our heart rate zones. Zone 1, indicated as rest and recovery, is defined as 50 to 60% of max heart rate. Zone 2, or easy effort, is defined as 60 to 70% of max heart rate. Zone 3 would be 70 to 80% of max heart rate. Zone 4 would be 80 to 90% of max heart rate. And Zone 5 is 90 to 100% of max heart rate. Considering that the events that we are preparing for are ultra endurance events, we would expect to spend a lot of time in Zone 2 training in order to build our aerobic base. But there are also benefits to training in the other zones, even for endurance objectives. Look forward to an upcoming episode on cardiovascular training.
All right, before we move on to the key takeaways and our action items that follow from this, let's take a look at how our home measuring equipment stacks up against the laboratory results. So in terms of body composition, our scale says that we are at 16.7% body fat, where the DexaScan revealed we're closer to a 20.3% body fat. Our bone mineral content, according to our scale, is 7.5 pounds. DexaScan indicates 6.1 pounds. Lean muscle mass, the scale says we're at 119.7 pounds, whereas the DexaScan revealed 116.5 pounds. Our scale estimates that we have a resting metabolic rate of 1,542 calories per day, and the RMR test revealed that our basal resting metabolic rate is closer to 1515 kilocalories per day. And in terms of resting heart rate, our Garmin has measured a 50 beats per minute resting heart rate, and during our RMR test, the laboratory measured 57 beats per minute. For max heart rate, calculation based on our age would have us at 167 beats per
minute. In the laboratory, we measured 179 beats per minute, and Garmin has reported 197 beats per minute. Garmin has estimated our VO2 max at 45, where the laboratory measured our VO2 max at 38.2 milliliters per kilogram per minute. So, clearly the laboratory equipment is more accurate. I think our home equipment is still good for measuring change over time. The max heart rate is a moving target. It's whatever the maximum you can measure at any given time, that's your max heart rate. So yeah, we should take everything with a grain of salt. I think this data is valuable. I think the laboratory assessment is extremely valuable. And for our home equipment, we'll use it, but not be too hung up on it. And for one thing is for sure, we do not want to waste heartbeats on emotion. We'll cover that aspect in a future video. But for now, let's go ahead and move on to the key takeaways from these laboratory tests, and we'll develop action items based on those takeaways. See you in a few minutes. So key takeaways: body composition. It would serve us well to increase our lean muscle mass throughout the entire body. We should definitely work to improve body symmetry. And I'm going to consider speaking with my physician about getting a bone density assessment. And the action items we're going to take out of this is we're starting a calisthenics program 3 days a week. Upcoming episode on that. The way we're going to address the symmetry at first is just doing the calisthenics and making sure doing equal reps on both sides. Things like I'm going to not let my push-ups exceed my pull-ups, so my pull-ups are going to have to catch up with my push-ups. But again, we will make a whole episode just on the strength training program. We're also going to start a mobility program. Coach Perry, link in the description, has a great mobility program for runners. So I think we'll do the calisthenics 3 days a week and the mobility training on the Tuesday and Thursday in between the calisthenic circuits. And elevation gains. Every time we go up and down mountains, we gain strength. And that won't necessarily address symmetry because we adapt our biomechanics to our strengths, but still that certainly counts as strength training and help us to build lean muscle mass. The metabolic key takeaways are the RMR test definitely validated our nutrition plan that we are becoming very efficient at burning fat. 88% of our resting metabolic needs are met through fat metabolism, so that's outstanding. We're going to continue on that. We're going to continue on our interval eating, our intermittent fasting. While our macronutrient balance is doing pretty well, we're going to work on, one, improving the quality of our foods, and two, focus more on our micronutrients, addressing any micronutrient deficiencies we may have in our diet. And I think that will have incredible gains for us. And another interesting thing that came out of the metabolic test is that the one thing that I've never wanted to do is count calories or count macronutrients. It's a key principle that calories in, calories out is not the whole story. That the foods we eat have more of an impact on hormone response. That's the whole thing with fat metabolism versus carbohydrate metabolism, and insulin being the key hormone that is impacted by our nutritional choices. So this has been my excuse to never count calories, but now that we know our resting metabolic rate and we know that we have to vary our caloric intake based on our activity level, and you cannot change what you can't measure. So I'm going to make an effort to, at least for a while, count calories and to start getting a feel of the number of calories and the types of meals I eat. And then hopefully once we establish some awareness of this, then I don't have to count calories the rest of my life. That's probably my least favorite thing, second to speaking on camera. So those are the action items that we're taking away from the metabolic test. And in terms of the cardiovascular key takeaways, mainly from the VO2 max test, we definitely want to try to expand our aerobic zone. And the zone between aerobic threshold and anaerobic threshold, we want to make that larger. We want to make that a larger range of heartbeats. And so the main way to do that, of course, is if we can increase our anaerobic threshold.
We clearly want to also increase our VO2 max. So we've already covered a little bit about zone training and this and that. So we will have a separate episode on this topic. And in the meantime, those are the takeaways, and our action items is to develop a program to address it. And so, yeah, again, outstanding experience. And before we wrap this up, I do want to give a quick plug for Jennifer Kurtz. She's the physiologist that conducted these tests for us. And Jennifer also offers coaching services. You'll see her resume on screen. She has just a tremendous amount of knowledge and experience in sports physiology, not only in strength and cardiovascular training, but especially nutrition. I believe that's some of her specialty. So I'll let Jennifer describe her services in her own words. But definitely, if you're looking for coaching services, I would highly recommend Coach Jennifer.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Kurtz, and I am here to tell you about training services that I also provide. Like I said, I am working on my PhD in exercise physiology and nutrition, and I study sports supplementation and nutritional interventions that'll help increase health and human performance. I am a certified coach to help with your training goals, whether that is just trying to get back into shape, trying to minimize disease, trying to train for a marathon. I have done it all. I've worked with collegiate athletes. I've worked in the private sector. I work a one-on-one basis, and I have just a lot of experience with working with people and finding creating unique programs that'll help you meet your training goals. So if you are interested in training goals or training services that help meet your goals, I'm here to help you along the way as well. The emphasis on training program is that I can do month-to-month basis. Typically, as you hang out with me and get to know your program and with help to see your results, I do recommend that longer periods of time will be better. So commit to at least 3 months, 2 months, and I promise you that you will see results based off of what your needs are.
At the end of each episode, I have to thank you for joining me on the journey, because it means so much to me, and I hope that it's informative, useful, or at least entertaining for you. In upcoming episodes, we're going to dive into strength training, cardiovascular training. We have an episode on nutrition coming up, ever important sleep episode. In the next episode, we're going up to Black Rock Mountain State Park, and we're going to talk about running form. And we're going to do more than talk about it, we're going to do it. So thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you next time. In the meantime, take care of yourselves, and happy trails.
Measurement is fun for me. Just come and try, and then you'll see. Find the height or weight or temp. My favorite thing is measure.
Or the process of glycolysis. An effect of this, byproducts of this system include lactate and the glycolysis produces glycolysis, lactate and hydrogen ions. I say substrates 15 times, but it doesn't matter. I realize I can read this and put graphics on top. I don't have to look at the camera. I think the cinematographer is the one who yells out rolling.
Rolling.
Yeah. Glycolysis. In the very next episode we're going to go up to Block Rack. Awesome.